Welcome to another episode of Your Money, Your Mission, the podcast designed to turn complex financial situations into actionable advice, powered by Johnson Financial Group. I'm Kelly Mould, and today we're going to explore the practical financial strategies that will help ensure a comfortable retirement. And joining me today is Jill Haupt, a retiree and former head of private banking at Johnson Financial Group. She's going to share her insights and experiences. Jill, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Kelly. It's great to be here.
So why don't we start with if you could tell our listeners a little bit about your background and kind of your transition into retirement.
Well, Craig and I started out as high school sweethearts.
Oh, wow.
And we went to college and ended up starting our careers me in financial services and he as a teacher. Had two sons, and that was kind of our story in a nutshell. We were each in our careers more than 40 years.
Oh, wow.
Various employers, different locations, but
really never changed the career path.
Right.
So found your passion and stuck with
Right.
it for the entire time.
Right.
Which we don't see that often anymore. So
No.
that's really interesting.
No, I think unique in both ways. Also marrying my high school sweetheart.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So you had a lot of time to grow together and learn to communicate and do
Yes.
some of the things that are so essential, I would
Yes.
think.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because when you explore retirement today, I am sure both you and Craig had an opportunity to look at parents or other seniors in your life and see how retirement used to look. I know I'm perceiving it very differently. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, in that time, Kelly, retirement really changed while we were still working.
Sure.
Things started off with pensions. I mean, pensions were still available when Craig and I both started working. I even have a little pension left over from one of my first employers.
Right.
But that changed, and whereas my parents, it was pension and Social Security.
Right. Everybody counted on that.
Everybody counted on
Right.
that. And so it was kind of a pretty simplistic retirement planning.
Yeah, and I know, in their day, my parents and grandparents, it wasn't at all unusual to start with a company because of the pension, and the expectation was to retire from that company, and oftentimes even have next generations join that same company. But you're right, in that 80s, 90s period, things changed drastically.
Right. And so with us, we definitely, our upbringing probably taught us to, save for the future, even though that wasn't going to be primarily for retirement. You needed to be concerned about health issues and having enough money for those types of unexpected expenses. But I would say Craig and I really started thinking about retirement in those early years of employment, probably in our 20s.
Right.
And that, unfortunately, part of the reason that we started that early was both of our dads died in their 50s. So they didn't get to retire.
Right. They
And-
never saw any of the rewards of all those years of work, right?
Right. So the impact of that had Craig and I thinking very early on that our mark would be to retire while we could still do things and really enjoy our life. And so we were kind of thinking in those early years, retire at 55.
Okay.
And because of the way now the retirement accounts, 401ks, the things that your employer did offer instead of pensions, we look to maximize those kinds of things.
So you did that early on, almost from the start.
Yes, yeah. And it was, it changed throughout the 40 years that we worked. There were times that we were putting money into a 401k. Craig started a 403b. Those changes also made us change, how do we allocate our savings and our funds? We had two sons.
Right.
So,
in those
on,
early years, there's a lot of expenses. So you have to really kind of look at
Right.
what you can do, right?
Yes.
And be mindful of how that changes over time.
Yes. And we learn both from, our personal experience, from family and friends, but also from talking to advisors. And we did that not just because I was in the financial services industry, but learning that you got to talk to somebody to kind of help sort out what is it I should be doing, what's the most important thing, and how to maximize what we're trying to do in order to get to where we're going.
Right, right. And so I would imagine budgeting has always been a part of your lifestyle, but budgeting is, it can be a little more complex, right? Like choosing what debt to pay off first, figuring out what approach you want to take to that savings plan. So I imagine, did you and Craig use tools for that budgeting, or how did the budgeting piece evolve so you could do this?
I think we early on, were probably fiscally conservative, and while we like to take vacations and have nice cars and those types of things, we made sure that we were always staying within our own income.
Okay.
And then as we thought about the retirement part of that was going to be the same case, right? Stay within your income, but what will that income be?
Right.
So we actually did some estate planning fairly early.
Okay.
You have to consider things like guardians for your kids.
Sure. So when the children come, if you've put it off, you can't any longer.
Right. So we did a trust early on, and a will and those types of things. But then we, were talking to advisors, who would help us with the decisions about how to invest our money, but also how to make it grow and how to get to where we wanted to go in terms of that. A fairly early retirement goal, at least it was, at the time.
In the beginning, right?
Yeah.
Especially based on, it's interesting because you were planning for long term, like making sure you had what you need for retirement far into the future, and yet have this example with the loss of your fathers to say we have to think about an earlier retirement. And at your stage, to say 55, I just can imagine what the parents and grandparents thought of that, right? Like that was...
You're just kids.
Yes, right? That's different. So as you got closer to age 55 and that period, kind of what changed then? Because I happen to know you actually didn't retire at 55, but it didn't really derail the plan.
Right.
Tell me how those decisions were made.
Yeah. Well, so lots of things happened in that span of time. We had, a little recession in the, early 2000s. I changed jobs, and Craig changed jobs. We relocated.
Okay.
So then looking again at our plan and saying, well, and how much you're enjoying your work.
Right.
Also came into.
Right. You don't have to retire if you're having a
right.
good,
If you're enjoying what you do.
Right.
We had continued to think it was going to be 55 until probably it got to be 55.
Okay.
And then we were like, oh, maybe not ready yet.
Yeah,
reevaluated.
reevaluated.
More so from a mental standpoint.
Okay.
Enjoying our jobs, where our kids were at, those types of things hadn't really triggered us to make a move earlier.
Okay.
And we were doing some traveling already, so it kind of all fit into.
So you were doing the things you wanted,
Yes.
you were living the lifestyle you wanted, and so there was no need to pull that trigger right away. But was that the point at which you started to really think about, maybe not today, but it's going to be in the near future?
Right.
So what is the budget? What is the retirement
Right.
life really going to look at?
Right.
Was that when those discussions started to
Yes.
happen?
And so we went through the exercise of a financial plan
Okay.
with Johnson Financial Group. And we had, you challenged us in the process of that plan to, well, what does retirement look like?
Right.
And be really more specific than kind of our vague dreams. And
Like we're going to travel and
right.
yeah, right.
And, well, how often you're going to travel and, the cars and where you live. We'd already been fortunate enough to purchase a second home and have enjoyed having a second home for over 20 years. So how does the second home fit into where are you going to live? Downsizing was definitely something we wanted to do. We had lived in a lot of different areas, as well as had the big house that we had certainly no longer needed the big house anymore. So we wanted to downsize, make life simpler, and get ready for retirement from the standpoint of the costs involved with having a larger home, and the fact that we wanted to pay down, and we did work at paying down the debt on our home so that our mortgage was smaller at the time that we pulled the trigger and said, okay, time to sell.
So a lot of clients that I have struggle with that choice to downsize. There's so many memories and things attached to the family home. The family home can be a big thing. Was that difficult for you, or did you have a different perspective on that?
I think we had a different perspective. I had, as a kid, moved a lot. My dad was in a position where he was transferred with promotions and things. So we lived, I wouldn't say in a suitcase, but we were moving every year for a while.
That's a lot. Yeah.
And even in our married life, Craig and I had 4 homes. And so the last one, we'd set up shop and had been in for 25 years, close to 25 years. And so we definitely looked at all the stuff we'd accumulated. But that, it was fairly easy for us to say, well, we have our second home. So some of those memories
We're more attached to a very common Wisconsin thing, right? To have the home up north and have those memories. So
So that was the homestead, as it were, and we could open our minds to the possibility on where do we want to live the other part of the year, since northern Wisconsin isn't ideal 12 months out of the year.
Right. So you actually it was a significant change from the big house to a condo. Tell me what kind of went into that decision?
Well, because we want to travel, we wanted to make sure that we could kind of lock the doors and leave for a long period of time and still feel like we weren't coming back to any issues, problems, or we wanted to feel like things were taken care of. We could be trouble-free, carefree.
A little more maintenance-free, maybe?
Maintenance-free. Then we were also, we had our first grandchild. And my older son and his wife, they live in West Bend. And so we started thinking, well, let's get closer to the grandson, kind of ensure some of that time with him. So we started thinking about, well, do we buy something in the southern Wisconsin area, close to the West Bend area? Or what about that idea we had at one point of living in a Florida or in Arizona, and the kids come to visit us there? Things were changing with the other part of our family life, and that would be my mother and Craig's mom. They were both alive at the time that we had tried to decide about that retirement. And so it ended up being that Craig retired ahead of me.
Okay.
And I have some thoughts about that.
Yes, I would like to hear that as well.
Yeah, but Craig retired ahead, and it worked out so well because his mom's health had really deteriorated, and he was around then to help her with things like doctor's visits.
Which is so important. I mean, when I think back, my grandparents, and for a large part, my parents didn't really have to be all that worried about parent caretaking because they didn't live that long, right? And now that's a very real thing for baby boomers and millennials to think about that responsibility.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
And he did have that then gift of being able to spend more time when she probably needed him most.
Right.
I would think.
Right. We're so grateful for that.
Right.
So we narrowed our ideas then. We thought the Arizona or the Florida, snowbird type of living wasn't going to work for us just because of the close ties and the feelings we had about how important family was in our retirement and our health, because we needed to be mindful that, our dads did pass away early, and, we wanted to commence with the fun leisure part of our retirement, but will we also be close to the healthcare systems and the doctors and the things that we knew and were comfortable with.
Right.
So
an important consideration.
Right.
For sure.
So we ended up with a condo, checked a box on that whole low maintenance and not concerns in regards to just leaving and letting the grass grow because someone's taking care of it, or the snow.
Right.
And we had, we were just so fortunate because we had our eye on a condo, but we had a couple of dogs, and we were trying to get our heads around the go from living in single family homes.
Right. That's a big change.
But this condo was a first floor unit on a walking path in a very animal friendly community. We were close to entertainment. It was walkable,
How nice.
and hence giving that it wasn't only a consideration for how we would retire financially, but your health care, your mental health, and being able to, when you're not traveling, doing the things that you love and keeping yourself healthy.
Right. So you mentioned that Craig retired a little ahead of you.
Yes.
And my husband is also retired ahead of me. So I would be really curious about what you thought about that and how that has worked for you guys.
Well, Craig and I are exactly the same age.
Okay.
I mean, exactly.
Okay.
3 days.
Okay.
So, so part of the consideration was his mom was failing in health.
Okay.
My mom was very healthy, and it made more sense that he would retire, and we would have an opportunity for him to kind of get his feet wet on this whole retirement thing.
Okay.
What was it like, and letting him have that opportunity to discover, what was he going to get involved in, and how was he going to spend his time? And then I joined him afterwards, and then that whole thought of, is this going to be too much togetherness?
That is a fear that I have myself, and I
Yeah.
think my husband is more frightened of it,
Yes.
actually.
Yeah.
So did you observe, did Craig adapt to it well? Did he struggle with that time? I mean, he goes from teaching a very kind of,
Yeah. Intense.
all-in, intense experience day to
Right.
day. So how did you observe his
Well,
adjustment?
there was, a unique difference in that he was retiring during COVID.
Okay,
So
we
he'd
were-
been working at home.
okay.
And that was, I think it even lasted a little bit longer after his retirement. So his career had really changed
Okay.
in that
sure.
respect. And so that being at home more, pretty easy to segue into being at home, but now your time is your own. That's the thing that was very apparent to me, is that retirement is a gift of time.
Yeah.
You now can decide what you want to do, when you want to do it, and how you want to do it. And so his first year, because he was 1 year ahead of me in the retirement transition, he was, getting ready to sell our house. And
So he was doing a lot of that
Right.
prep work and
right.
taking care of the projects. I know my husband says he's not actually retired. He just has a new boss, and she's a little tough on him.
I think that's very true, because he had a long to-do list and was, between caring for his mom and getting our house ready, because we knew my retirement would come in the subsequent year, and that we were going to move at that point because we didn't need that house, and the market was really also dictating some of that.
Right.
Then was the time to sell our house, getting us the most money. And then we had our second home to fall back on until we found exactly what we wanted when we wanted it.
Right. So that worked out really
Yes.
well.
Yeah.
And so then you joined him, after. So how was your adjustment into retirement?
Well, it was pretty smooth because, again, it was during COVID. And so I had been working from home. So we'd had a certain extent of togetherness. Yeah. So, and I had a number of things that I was involved in that I continued to be involved in, from a volunteer standpoint, charitable work, that type of thing. So I could just pick up and do a little bit more of that and spend more time doing that. I said that it was important for us to maintain our health. I could now go to the gym every day. If I wanted to, I could go twice a day. I could be involved in classes for the yoga.
That is
things.
incredible. Is that the first time you've ever been able to regularly go to the gym every day?
Yes, yes.
And in such an important time from a health perspective to really embrace, that physical aspect that you need to do all those things, to travel, to have the energy to do it.
Right. And I set some goals for myself in terms of reading more books and doing the crossword puzzles or the mind the mind teasers, doing the types of things that would keep my brain stimulated.
Right. To stay sharp on all those things that you kind of naturally get when you're so exposed to people in the workplace, but need to now structure it yourself.
Yeah.
So I know whether were in retirement or pre-retirement, you and Craig also felt strongly about having an emergency fund, knowing that there are things we don't know that will happen. How have you planned for that in retirement as well?
Well, and I'm grateful we did plan because it's much harder to kind of put that emergency fund. Certainly, we saved an emergency fund,
right?
But what we have found in retirement, and it's been 4 years now that we've been retired, what we found is things happen that you didn't expect. And having liquid funds that are accessible without impacting your whole plan.
Right.
That emergency fund does that. So a line of credit, a home equity line of credit was one of the primary things that I think was a great vehicle. And then we had that until we sold the house. And then having a line of credit secured another way, but working with your banker to decide
just
what's
to have
the best
choices,
way.
Right? Whether it's credit or you're saving, you get to pull from a bucket that makes sense in that time.
Because we had paid down debt, and that was important because you wanted to minimize your monthly payments and that part of your budget. But having something that you could go into, use it for a short-term period because timing just wasn't right.
Right. I think some people don't realize that lines of credit isn't just having credit there for fun money, right? It is a strategy to have in place if the timing isn't right. If your investments are soaring, right? Or if they're very low, you want to be able to evaluate that to see, does it make sense to pull it out now, or do I need to wait because the market is struggling? Or, do I want to take those gains off the table now and impact my taxes? There's just a number of considerations.
It's a financial tool so that you really are prepared to weather any type of unexpected emergency or just taking an opportunity to do something that, we were going to do that later, but let's do it now. The time is right. We'll tap into this line of credit and we're going to pay ourselves back here in a short term.
Right. You also mentioned paying down debt. That was a part of your strategy, especially as you got closer to retirement. You really wanted to reduce that so you'd have more control over your budget. Can you share some of the things that you did with that?
Sure. Having the opportunity, first of all, our expenses were actually, probably going down. We had our sons were no longer living with us. We didn't have two other mouths to feed. College expenses were taken care of. And so then earmarking some of that funding to pay down debt, we ideally wanted to work towards not having any car payments, not having any mortgage. With the market being what it was, selling our house allowed us to do that too.
Right.
And so in the last stages of our, when we were still living in our home, that there were refinance opportunities where we could actually just accelerate our payments and take a shorter term loan so that we would give ourselves that discipline to pay it off faster.
Right. And have more of the benefit when you did sell it for what you needed to do. And you also did some things, talked about healthcare costs, the healthcare savings accounts, right? Those were pivotal as well.
Yes. Well, as we all know, healthcare becomes one of the biggest expenses you can have.
Right.
And so taking advantage of things that your employer has, I had taken advantage of a health savings account, a retiree's medical savings account. which was very helpful in those interim times where before Medicare, and while we still had regular traditional insurance, we were using that to pay premiums. And then taking advantage when that earlier time period when my husband and I had options with our different employers, he had a long-term care option that we purchased when we were quite young.
Right, which is a huge benefit, right?
And so then we knew that was in place. Otherwise, we would have had to, make some consideration for funding something for long-term care.
In the event of an emergency care situation.
Right.
And minimizing tax liabilities is important as well, right? Especially in those early years, if you've done that earlier before Medicare, right?
Yes.
So what kinds of things did you think about with that?
Yeah. Well, taking advantage of the employer offered programs like a 401k for my husband, a 403b, being able to put money aside on a pre-tax basis. And when we had some funds that became available, we put those into an annuity at one point. That was tax deferred, just because we knew that at that time, retirement was a whole lot further out on our horizon.
Sure.
So those things, they became IRA vehicles, and so we had the feeling of security that we were minimizing taxes during our highest income years.
Right.
And now, no one knows what that tax reform will look like in the future.
Right.
But for the most part, having those dollars saved on a pre-tax basis is going to grow faster than you're going to pay in taxes over the long run. So we did a lot with tax-deferred investing.
Right.
And we had the right advice and planning that we buffered taxes early on and put off in a way that we think is going to give us the best benefit overall, and maintain the investments without that loss of taxes over the years.
Right. I mean, like you said, you use these things to in your highest tax years,
right?
And then you maybe mix it with other things like personal savings accounts, Roth IRAs, other options that aren't necessarily tax deferred, but give you some other buckets to make those choices. Again, looking at the time that you're in.
Right.
And then from the investment strategy, that changes too, right? You're a little more aggressive in the earlier years, even in some of those tools through the employer, but then you become a little bit more conservative down the road, depending on how close you are.
And managing the taxes becomes a major strategy. So we probably rely on our tax advisor a lot more in these later years than we did earlier.
Sure.
And getting their advice on things like our Roth IRA investments and how we can still continue to do our best to minimize tax.
Right, because we always,
what we've got.
Most clients will say to me, look, I don't mind paying taxes. They do good things. I want fire and police and all these kinds of things, but I don't want to pay more than I need to.
Right.
And so it's how do you figure that out? And I know that when people are looking at this, the financial aspect of this requires a lot of communication at each step. And I know you and Craig have been together since teenagers, but I would imagine even through this process, you've had to kind of come to agreements on certain things.
Sure.
Most people aren't 100% aligned the whole way.
Right. We were definitely not 100% aligned, and having conversations about it, preparing our financial planning, preparing to talk to our advisors. We would have conversations and kind of air out those feelings about how one or the other of us maybe sees it differently. And then we come to a compromise that was fairly easy for Craig and I to do.
Right.
Because I guess we weren't so far apart, but just, tweaking some of the details of what we thought was important. And for the most part, it was the same, but maybe timing was one of us wants to do something a little bit sooner than the other, and working those things out.
And did you, I know you being in this industry, it would be easy for Craig to say, well, you just figure this out or do it. And I know my husband will rely on me in the same way, but I find, and I'm curious to know if you've had this experience, that when I bring him in with our advisors, that they are much more patient, right, as they go through it, and they give us the options, and we're able to communicate better because we have that other perspective.
Right.
Did you find that?
Yes, definitely. It's that third party perspective.
Yeah,
so
that helps both of us get.
Right. We can both enter the conversation by saying, well, I kind of feel it should be this way. And he's saying, well, I think it should be this way. What do you think? And that has worked very well for us because, there are pros and cons of any of those decisions. And then there's also gray area.
Right.
But it helps to get someone else's opinion about that.
Yeah, that's certainly something I've experienced as well. That it kind of was surprised, but how effective that was.
Yes.
And then I know that a lot of folks go, I'm going to retire. It's going to be great. I don't really have to think about what I'm going to do, finding that purpose. Was that part of the discussions too, especially when, like, what are we going to do? We're not going to, it's not sitting on the front porch in a rocking chair, right?
Yeah, Right. Yeah, very much so, Kelly, because, Craig thought at first, well, I'll probably get a part-time job because he thought he wouldn't be busy enough and wanted to, make sure that he had filled his time and wasn't sitting on the couch watching old Gunsmoke episodes. So,
there's nothing wrong with that once in a while. If that's what you want to do.
That's right. But back to the, important things, family and health, that's not good for your health to be, not mentally challenged and not active. So we did have, he had early on decided, well, yeah, maybe I'm busy with these other things. I'm not going to think about a part-time job. I don't need to.
Right.
We certainly didn't feel like we needed to from a financial standpoint, and he didn't need to do it for any of the other mental health reasons.
Right. You were able to fill your time and your purpose with other things.
Right.
It sounds like.
Right.
And it sounds like you were really enjoying it too. So then that, a part-time job then restricts that flexibility that you work so hard to get, right? To be able to choose that schedule.
Right. And he, unfortunately he did have some health problems early on in his retirement.
Right.
So I'm happy to say that those things are mostly behind us.
Thank goodness.
Right. And so, as a result, he wanted to, do more things that are just fun and leisure than to also have the responsibility of a job, a part-time job, or just making time for the travel. That was so important for us. We'd put that off. I think I would classify our working years as working really hard, taking some, vacation time off, but not traveling as much as we'd like because we just didn't have the time.
Right.
Because especially traveling internationally can be a lot more time consuming
and difficult than when you have a family and you have work responsibilities. Right. It's much more difficult. So.
Yes.
You had mentioned that when the children were born, you got right on the estate planning, which is really important. Over time, have you had to take a look at that and revise that and make sure it aligned with the priorities as they've changed?
Yes. We went through a major review of that and had it redrafted or tweaked, would probably be a better way of saying that. After the boys were, well on their own, they rewriting it in a way that now we're really thinking about what happens when we're no longer here,
right?
But there is an estate, and there is how do we make sure that the funds that we maximize what we can pass on to our heirs, to charity, and have our wishes taken care of now that our boys are now men
adults,
and adults,
right?
And they'll have to actually see that estate plan through.
Right.
So that was another change that had to be made in the plan, and naming a trustee like Johnson Financial Group, I think was very helpful because I've got two boys they're 5 years different, very different in everything.
Personality,
Right.
and right? Yep.
And so being able to have that co-trustee with our children then helps to, I anticipate it'll help mediate any differences the boys have.
Right.
The men,
Right.
my boys, now men, had in terms of what to do once Craig and I are, even once we may not be able to make our own decisions,
Right.
or, ultimately when we're not here anymore.
Right. I often find that people have leaned towards getting some outside third-party assistance with, trustee and some of that post-death administration, because it is just so much more important to them that the children have that support and that they continue to carry on and have their Thanksgiving dinners together,
Yes.
and that just works out a little bit better.
And the reality of traveling more is you start to think about, what would happen? We're together, we're traveling. What would happen? And it's such a big peace of mind to know that it's taken care of.
Right.
Things will, the things will fall into place, and things will happen as they should if we're not there suddenly.
Right. Right. That is important. Jill, thank you so much for sharing your insights. I'm so pleased that your retirement is going so
Thanks.
well, and I hope that these insights have been helpful to our listeners. And thanks to all of you for joining in today. If you have questions, make sure you go to the show notes, type your question, and we will tackle that. Also, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes of Your Money, Your Mission, the podcast designed to turn complex financial situations into actionable advice, powered by Johnson Financial Group. Thank you, Jill.
Thank you.
This podcast is not a recommendation to buy or sell any investment or financial products. Whether a particular investment or financial solution is right for you depends on the facts of your particular situation. Please consult your own professional advisor prior to taking a profession based on the content of the podcast. Wealth management services are provided through Johnson Bank and Johnson Wealth Inc., Johnson Financial Group companies. Additional information about Johnson Wealth Inc., a registered investment advisor, and its investment advisor representatives is available at advisorinfo.sec.gov. Investment products are not insured by the FDIC, are not deposits, and may be spent.